Official today. Hey guys, it's Jamie here with Milk Allergy Mom. I'm here with my allergist, Dr. Siri.
Good morning, how are you?
Awesome. I have a great new tagline. It's called Ask Siri, the Allergist.
Yeah.
Hope you don't mind that.
No, we should trademark it and put it online. What do you think?
That sounds great. Well, today we're going to take about 10 minutes to talk about how to prepare for a food challenge, because this is something that we just hear more and more about, our food challenges. And we've actually done a video before about 3 kinds of food allergy testing. And it was the skin, the blood, and now food challenges, which is exciting because that was not a food allergy test we did 13 years ago when I got started. So it's kind of something we're seeing more of, and a big question we always get in the public here and in our membership is, we're getting ready to go for a food challenge, and what do I need to know? So we thought it would be fun today to go over a few things. I have a few mom suggestions, and you had a great list of doctor suggestions. So should we get to it?
That sounds great. Yeah.
Awesome.
And even though your allergist before may not have offered food challenges, definitely more and more allergists are interested. They're learning about it. It's something that allergists are now owning as far as food allergies. And so if you're with an allergist and you say something like, they've never offered me a food challenge, sometimes you just have to ask and just say, hey, can we do this or that? And then at the academy meetings and all the professional societies, things like that, the conferences I go to, even people who before were not that much into food allergies or doing food challenges are now learning about it, and they're doing it. So I think it'll just be something that's that's standard of care that everybody's going to be doing soon.
Great. But right now they may or may not offer food challenges.
Yes, your allergist may or may not, just because of either comfort level, space, time, nursing. There's a lot of things that kind of go into play.
Okay.
They may refer you to a center. It's possible if they're in a group, maybe one person likes doing them, and the rest of them will refer to that one physician. So there's a lot of different options there.
Okay. And my question just got away from me. You can challenge on different kinds of foods.
Definitely.
So we've had allergy moms getting ready to go do baked milk challenges, liquid milk challenges, baked egg challenges, straight egg challenges, peanut challenges.
So generally the rule is, why would you want to challenge a patient? And for most allergists in the country, who are not kind of hardcore academics, where they can do kind of more cutting edge things without being concerned about patients having anaphylaxis in the office because they have a large staff. So for most allergists, they would do a food challenge if there's a possibility your child's going to pass. So there's no point in potentially harming the child if the probability is they're going to fail. So if you have a child who's recently had an anaphylactic reaction to a food product, and that food product has been confirmed by blood test and or skin test, then there's not a point to doing that food challenge. So the food challenge is primarily intended to see in questionable cases, when maybe the blood test is positive and the skin test is negative, or the skin test is negative and the blood test is positive, where they believe that your child might be able to tolerate certain forms of the food, such as baked milk or baked egg, or where they think maybe your child has outgrown the food product. We get a lot of questions about people who were diagnosed because they were infants and their blood levels were super high to peanut, eggs, or milk, and they had only eczema, and the child has never eaten the specific food, but blood and skin tests are still not looking favorable. I think that's a really important question to ask with your allergist, whether or not it would be worthwhile doing, because as in medicine, the tenet is still first do no harm. And if you have someone who's really skilled at doing food challenges, that you're confident in the office, they're watching your kids very closely, then I think that's all favorable. But if it's a situation where you're not confident, because that's really for any parent. I've got 4 kids myself, to have that trust level. If you're not confident, you're not sure, don't just go for it. I mean, it's okay to ask questions. Lots of them.
Yes, very good. Yes, so there is a time and a place to do the food challenges. And I was in that situation too, where we tested high to allergies, certain foods, but we'd actually never eaten them. And so you did do those challenges with us way back when, thankfully, and we were able to add those in. And now my kids eat those things every day. So let's get to our list of things to prepare, because we have a community of very diligent, careful moms who sometimes can get a little anxious too about things like this, myself included. So you have a list of some doctor tips, which I thought were fantastic, and then I can end with some of my my special mom tips too, family tips that we've just had so many food challenges that I kind of have a few things in my back pocket too. So I love your list. Let's go over it. We have got it right here for us. So
how about we alternate? Maybe you shoot one off.
I'll shoot one off. Well, we just shot off the camera.
Sorry about that.
No, you're good.
Totally my fault because I'm a
mistake.
gesticulator.
All right. Well, one of my favorite things to tell moms to do is to prepare the kiddo, because it's something you've been telling them all this time that this food is super harmful to them, and now you're going to go into an allergist office and ask them to eat it. So for me, preparing my child is kind of a thing that we do as a family, but we also like to get the doctor involved to kind of at our visit before that, as we're learning that we're going to do a challenge. And this would be a good thing for parents to know, because that's your opportunity. So hearing it from me now might help them to not miss that window. So you're in the office and they say you're a good candidate for a food challenge, let's have you come back. That's a good point for the parent to say, hey, can you explain to Johnny what exactly that is and what we're going to do and how it can be helpful. And so I think that preparing them in the best way possible, I can't think, there's probably maybe situations where not knowing is better. I don't know. But in my case with my kiddo, the more you know, the better. And so that's worked out really well for us.
Yeah, generally speaking, to get, the assent and understanding of the child is always super helpful, because they're the ones who are going to have to report the symptoms. And, you know your child, you're the one who knows your child best, whether they're an anxious kid or not an anxious kid. So one thing to kind of note about kind of preparing your child and having conversation about it, I mean, this could have been something that you've told your child, you cannot eat, you don't touch, it's going to kill you. And then so in their mind, it can be very anxiety provoking. But also leading up to it in terms of the conversations, I mean, they're very keyed into your emotions and your whole family's emotions. So if you're very anxious and you have conversations in front of them with another parent or other, adults and things like that about how, it's a nervous wreck, that's going to impact their feelings too. And so to have it really be successful, maybe even if you are a nervous wreck, because you probably are, to kind of keep those, kind of emotions and things like that in check for, kind of private adult discussions, and to not show them that much how worried you are, because I think the child then becomes super worried. And so, I think that that's really important to kind of figure out, is that, and then when you have the conversation, it's you can have a very adult conversation with your child, depending on how old they are, and say, this is something that we think now is going to, that you might actually be able to eat. And if you have any problems with it, I'll be right there. The doctor will be right there, and be very enthusiastic and positive about that. And just say, we're doing this because we think that we're, moving forward in that, in that path where you can actually potentially, live more normally, have more freedoms, things like that. Because for many kids, they're used to it, and they don't see necessarily all the work that you put into it to make their food safe and they're safe and things like that. And so they're like, well, why do we have to change things, Mom?
And they don't see
Dad?
the possibilities of what can change. And that's one thing that the Milk Allergy Mom community is great for, is for those moms to come in and say, I'm really nervous about this, what are your tips, and not put that on the kiddos. A lot of times those are conversations that are good for adults to have, but not necessarily for our kids to have. And one thing I will note, that my kiddo as a preteen has done a lot of food challenges with his OIT. And the one thing that really set his mind at ease when we first started going was to let him know that if there was a reaction, that he was in the best place possible to experience having epi, and that a doctor would help him, show him how to do that, and it would be a good learning experience. And I think we even talked about how it was just about using the epi and using it in a controlled environment. And that really set his mind at ease, that this is a slim chance that this will have to happen. But if you do, Dr. Siri will be there to help you, and you'll learn a lot. So.
And also, I think knowing about, I apologize for 1 second.
Skin testing for me to read.
Great, thank you.
All right.
So also knowing, as far as your child, is, so it is important to talk about verbalization of their symptoms, because, especially if they're a lot younger, if they're starting to eat a food and they're feeling like their mouth is a little burny or tingly, so, talking about what's normal, not normal. And if you have a very anxious child who verbalizes that their toe itches and their, earball itches, or is that even a thing? Earball. So then, you can kind of gauge, and so, for example, yesterday, we were doing dosing on a child with, funny enough, baked egg and baked milk all at the same time. And the first, few crumbs, the child was like, the top of my mouth feels kind of numb and a little itchy. And, parents were like, well, he's a little nervous. And so we said, no problem. So we waited a bit and I kind of gave him a scale. And I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how bad is this? And then, do you feel comfortable? Is this something that worries you? And the child was like, no. So he actually progressed, 4 more steps. And so it was good that, even though he was saying, I was having symptoms, and then some people would have stopped, it's important to gauge, and the parents were like, yes, he's kind of anxious and he kind of talks about stuff all the time. So he may be hypersensitive to his symptoms. And so I think all those things saying that you may experience some of these things, it will be very mild at the beginning. If you have anything, let us know, and then we can kind of talk about it. And so that open line of communication is helpful.
It's very helpful. All right, so we've got the child prepared. You want me to keep going, or you want to
Sure,
list yours?
yeah.
All right, so another thing that I like to do when we're in the office is bring something to distract the kiddo. And with enough challenges, I wish I had a count of how many we've done. It's literally probably in the 20s. And with 2 kids too. So having a distraction, I like it to be something normal that they normally do, because if it's something new and exciting, they get a new toy, you bring it in, like some excitement can actually cause some different symptoms. So just something normal that's in their everyday routine, that you're just kind of bringing that routine into the doctor's office to help them sort of acclimate to what's going on and keep them distracted, because like we talked about, the anxiousness, just the worrisome that can happen in our kiddos can be minimized, I think, if they have an activity that they're used to doing, whether that's reading a book with mom, bringing a device, playing cards with dad. My son's brought in a card game that they always play, so they're just playing it like normal people. And then when we see symptoms, we can be a little more assured that he's distracted enough that he maybe isn't this isn't a mental thing, but we need to really pay attention. So having our kids distracted, and I like to say my next one is for the mom to be distracted. I think, or whoever is really nervous. So a lot of our moms in our community are nervous moms. That's why they spend a lot of time in this community, is for the support that they need. And my biggest tip in the recent times of doing challenges is to have a friend on text. So a lot of times I'll be one of our moms here in the community because they understand me more than anybody. I do that more than having a grandma or my sister on, because I need the people who understand what I'm going through. So I have a mom from our group on text, and I'm just like giving her the play-by-play. My kid doesn't see it. He doesn't hear it. It's not affecting him at all. But I have like a lifeline outside of what's going on to really keep me grounded. So that's one of my favorite new tips. And so to have a second adult on hand, because you're trying to keep your nervous self distracted. You've got your kiddo with his activity or her activity. And my husband, I always try to schedule so that he can come to the challenges, because he's not as nervous as I am. He kind of takes the reins. He helps keep an eye on my son, and I'm over in the corner.
Right.
Being a little nervous with my texting. So those were my tips. Prepare the kiddo, have a distraction for them, have a distraction for mom, have a second adult, because everybody's distracted. Yeah. And those are my tips as a mom. But you have some really good doctor tips that weren't even on my radar.
I think we can touch on each of those as well, as far as, having somebody on speed dial, or, many times, if mom comes in and, dad's at work, or dad comes in, mom's at work, we both can't be there. Certainly, even just talking about it as a family, can you be available by message, things like that, so we can kind of document the journey, we can make decisions about how to go forward, because sometimes that's going to need to be made, and it is hard to make decisions on your own, and so if you have another family member available who can help you with that, whether it's a spouse or a grandparent, I think that's helpful.
Yeah, grandparent, an aunt and uncle, it doesn't have to be a spouse, but having that second adult, I think my mind just gets so, you just get so cloudy when you're in the middle of doing these challenges sometimes. It's stressful, and so you just aren't thinking as clearly. So I always do like that second adult.
And we've had even patients, live stream, and, talk to each other, or Skype, or whatever it is that people do these days.
Yeah,
So
FaceTime. Yeah, FaceTime is good.
And then as far as distraction, things like that, depending on the age of the child and, how your child is, and, every parent's different, every child's different. You can talk about a reward system and say, this is how the day's going to go. You're going to go in. We may or may not have just a few pokes for skin testing. We will start eating a food. It'll be small quantities. You may be a little hungry. We're going to drink some water, those kind of things. And so kind of a play-by-play about, how the day might go. And we may be there for a few hours, or whether that means, they're going to be doing homework, which, maybe, cruel and unusual. Or they may be doing like, video games, or, it's a break time. So whatever it is that you're comfortable with, if you're just like, no, this is discipline time, we got to do homework and get them distracted, or, this is playtime and you get a day off of school, or whatever it is, they just have to know. I think kids like to know how their day's going to be too. And you can say right afterwards, we can have, XYZ food. And, for some children who are difficult, you can say, this is what I expect, that, you'll calmly take the food, etc. For some kids who may have difficulty, if you're able to have that conversation with your child, because some kids, you can't have a conversation with the child about, because maybe there might be some challenges that they have. And so if you are able to say, this is the day, this is my expectation of, how you are going to, act or behave, and then, we will definitely have something reward afterwards. That could be going out to a restaurant, or that could be having a specific snack, or that could be a toy. Now, we've had a lot of Hot Wheels go through our office, little Hot Wheels for good behavior. So I think that those things are important to talk about. As far as other people to bring into the office, as much as possible, you want to focus on the child, and it's their time, and things like that. And so bringing other children in the office makes it really hard. But, some parents can't do that. They have to bring their other kids. This is their only option, in which case it is helpful to have a second adult to kind of distract and kind of talk to the other, small children in particular. As far as things like, even older siblings can be helpful. Or they can be not helpful. And so if you have a very anxious older sibling who might get distressed at things that are happening to this younger child, I would recommend you leave them at home. But if you have a older sibling who's very reassuring, holds her hand, is like big brother, big sister, and does very well with that child, I think that it would be helpful to bring them in, because sometimes they're the ones who like have the other child sitting in their lap while they're eating the food and things like that. Yeah.
So as far as siblings coming, whatever is helpful to the challenge being a success.
Correct.
is what you want to do. All right.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
And, other things kind of in preparation. So we're talking about, you've scheduled it, the week coming up to it. Certainly most people will do food challenges off antihistamines, because we want to see a reaction quickly. We don't want to suppress it. We don't want to mask it. And so most board certified allergists will do food challenges off medication. And so, it's the same. It's 7 to 10 days off antihistamines. They clearly want you to continue your asthma medication. If you are during peak allergy season, you're having trouble, there may be alternatives. So that's something to discuss with your doctor before, obviously, the challenge date is, can we do XYZ nasal spray instead? If so, can we hold that? Can I do decongestants like Sudafed? Should I do nasal washes? All those things. And so getting the kids off of medication to prepare for them is helpful. Some physicians will say Montelukast or Singular is okay. Some physicians will have you hold it for a day or two or longer. Obviously, other antihistamines include things like for acid reflux, so Zantac, the Pepsids. Those are antihistamines too, and will suppress reactions. So those are things you definitely want to discuss with a physician. So treating it just like skin testing is going to be very favorable as far as medications that should be held. But we definitely don't want kids to be off of all their medications, because their lung functions, their wheezing, asthma should be stable, and then their skin should be healthy. So leading up to it, we always tell parents, especially if it's peak allergy season, just don't change your routine. It's probably a bad idea to schedule a food challenge right after you come back from Disneyland or Disney World. It's probably a bad idea to schedule a food challenge. If you're going to be super busy that week, you guys are going to be out raking leaves, and then the child's going to have a lot of symptoms. So we usually say during that week leading up, keep your child indoors. Don't change your routine incredibly. Don't eat any new foods. Yes, we've had patients like anaphylaxis, and we've had to reschedule the food challenge because they just had an anaphylaxis to something they had at a party. And so and then of course you also want to keep them healthy and well. So extra sinus rinses that week, because if your child is unhealthy, if they're sick, they're symptomatic, they're having asthma attacks, you're going to have to reschedule that food challenge that you've been waiting for. And so all these things are really important leading up to it, and communication with your office. And sometimes we'll have things in the office that we can challenge them to, but most of the time we'll have the parents bring the food in. Whether that's a baked cupcake that we give them a recipe for, things like that. A specific food product they might be interested in eating, those kind of things. And so you have to be clear, because even though we discuss this, there's a number of times where parents just simply forget, and they forgot to bring in the food product. And then one of them has to run out to the store, or they have to, we have to reschedule, so they got to run out to the store. Luckily we have lots of stores nearby to go get whatever food product it is. And so also to have a variety. So, you discuss that with the allergist, with the office in advance, but, let's just say you were doing, a dairy product. Well, it's possible your, 4-year-old may reject whatever whatever you bring in, and they hate it. So, you may have to bring in multiple different kinds of foods that you think your child might be willing to eat, because sometimes they won't. Especially things like, wheat crackers, things like that. Sometimes, they don't like that product. They will refuse. We have a lot of food refusals, particularly under the age 3 set. They will refuse to eat whatever it is that you tell them to, despite the fact that you think this is a yummy cupcake. They should be able to eat it and like it.
My kiddo hated the scrambled egg as a toddler, and I did not have an alternative. So that's a very good tip. I wouldn't have thought of that. So a lot of times the parents are bringing their own food.
Yes,
and
then
talk to your
condiments
doctor.
are sometimes okay. Talk to your doctor. Sometimes syrups, condiments, those kind of things may be okay. We've had the case where we've had to add like a strawberry syrup or something. Obviously, if it's a dairy-free product, we've got to make sure it's dairy-free. We have to read the package label. So
right.
all those things will be helpful.
Okay.
And sometimes maybe the office will run out of spoons or forks for you to or little knives to cut your food, and so it is helpful to the office if you would bring a few utensils. You don't have to. Most offices expect that, but you never know when you might run out of something.
Just be as prepared as possible.
Be as prepared.
Yeah.
And you definitely should bring your EpiPens.
Bring your EpiPens.
Injectors, ABQs with you, because you never know when something could happen afterwards. You guys drive home and there may be a problem. Certainly, it's food challenges are the same with OIT. There's going to be an exercise restriction. You should not, finish your food challenge, then go outside and play football for an hour,
Yes.
Especially since you've been off of medication.
So don't schedule a food challenge day on the day of soccer practice or something like that. When we're talking about preparing, just really know what your day is going to be and make sure it's...
Yeah. Or consult with your physician, and maybe like hours afterwards. But if you're like, we're going to do the food challenge and we're going to head to gymnastics. Not a plan.
Good tip.
So
all right.
And most of the time, the child will also be not only off of antihistamines but also fasting, which means that in our office we require a 3-hour fast, which means they haven't had food for 3 hours. And we know little people, they're, I get hypoglycemic if I haven't eaten first thing in the morning. We schedule most of our food challenges in the morning, but we've done afternoons as well. You just cannot, usually if you have a heavy meal and you've just eaten a cheeseburger, it's probably a bad idea to go and challenge, like a peanut later on, because it'll delay absorption. And we won't see symptoms quickly. So, and this is the hard lesson, one or two times.
Which is maybe why we see delayed reactions. So an empty stomach is the best on a food challenge. Okay.
Yeah, I've learned that lesson myself, probably 1 or 2 times in my 15-year career. The parents had driven far and the child, forgot, and they had, breakfast. And then we proceeded with the food challenge anyway. And then later on, the child came back 6 hours later with hives. So it is a bad idea to do food challenges if your child has eaten heavy meals, in particular fatty meals, recently. Even if your doctor says, oh, it's just an hour, 2 hours, everybody has a different absorption rate. But if there's food in their stomach at the time of the challenge, you're probably not going to see the results you're going to want to see if they're going to have a reaction as quickly as you want. So our rule is typically fasting 3 hours. But we also let some of our parents, because the kids are just screaming hungry. We're like, okay, fine. Your appointment's at 8. Wake them up at 5. Give them a few crackers so they're not super hypoglycemic, or a dry piece of toast, whatever, and then bring them in for the food challenge, and they'll be fine. So it depends on the allergist. It depends on the office, what their rules are. But generally, that's going to give you the most success in actually seeing reactions quickly and making sure those reactions don't result into something bad later on, and now you're freaking out because they've had a bad reaction.
Right.
So,
and when we do our OIT food challenges, but we are able to bring in a snack for our kiddo to eat afterwards because he's fasted, done the challenge, and now we're trying to keep him upright. So at some point, you let us give him a snack after he's done his challenge. So a nice, safe snack that would be friendly enough for an allergy office. So we try to bring in something pretty benign when it comes to thinking of other people's allergies, but to bring our own snack to fill up their little bellies after the challenge. That's usually, is that normal?
Yeah, that is a very good point. So after a food challenge, your kids are going to be starving. So that means if you guys immediately head out and go get some food, fine. But or if you bring in something they can have, to tide them over until you get somewhere, that's great. So we typically tell our parents, bring something in for your child to eat immediately after the challenge, because they're going to be starving. Because they're typically small quantities that we increase every 15 to 40 minutes depending on the allergist protocol.
And it can take quite a long time, the challenges, like hours.
And if you get a bad feeling, from the challenge, it's okay to speak up and say something. We had somebody come from a university who's told us that they were stuck in a closet, and then every hour somebody would check on them. And I was like, well, that doesn't sound like a really good protocol. So, if it were me, I would have been a nervous wreck and would have been out in the hall saying, are you guys going to come check my child?
Right. That just sounds awful.
If you get a bad feeling, then, please do say something. And,
right.
people are running around, things like that. But, it's your child's safety that's, your responsibility. accountability really. And
Right.
even, I mean, it could be that they have 10 anaphylaxis down the hallway of allergy shots, and so I mean, so just speak up for your own child. But yeah, having a snack afterwards is helpful. So for OIT, it actually does decrease reactions. So that's why we give the dose and then you immediately
so
eat.
mine's a little bit different doing that. But you would say a snack is okay on a food challenge
Afterwards.
after the food whole challenge is over and
Yes.
they've passed or not passed or whatever.
Yes.
Okay, once you
Yeah.
have your results of a food challenge,
Yeah.
they can have their snack. All right.
If they haven't passed, then that's a whole nother story.
Okay, a whole nother story. And that goes with drinking a lot. You put on our list bringing lots of water to drink.
Water, to get the food product down. Some offices will allow juice. Most of them don't allow anything thicker than that. And obviously.
So water's a little bit different than eating.
Oh yes, because mostly it's basically to wash it down.
Okay.
And so sometimes, like for the cute little guy who was doing a challenge yesterday, or actually he was doing desensitization. Basically, he had a little itch in the mouth. He drank some water, and it got passed.
Okay.
So you never know. So it's helpful to have fluids and things like that. And certainly for preparation, they should wear loose, comfortable clothing. And this applies to the parents as well. We just had this discussion. I said, sometimes, you guys are going to go to work right afterwards, and you're dressed in your, high heels and suits and business suits, and then, then your child has a bad day and they vomit. I mean, then you're like, oh my goodness. So
Yum.
the parents should be in comfortable clothing, comfortable shoes where, they may have to, kind of walk and go get things or run down the hall after their 2-year-old.
Yes.
You should feel comfortable.
Everybody
as well.
should be comfortable. It's a
Yes.
good tip.
Yeah, and clothing that we can easily remove or look under for hives and those kind of things.
All right, I think we got it all, Dr. Siri, and I think I need to get you back to your patients. So we are going to get this
Thank you.
done. And so that, again, was our video on how to prepare for food challenges, something we're seeing lots more of these days. People are always asking, what are some tips for them? This is way more tips than I ever knew for doing a food challenge, even though I do them. So thank you so much for coming and just articulating lots of things that would be helpful for us to be as prepared as possible, because the more prepared you are, I think the more success you will have with these food challenges, and we want our kids and parents to have successful challenges. So very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. This is awesome.
Thanks.
Next time we'll see
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.